Today, we're meeting an entrepreneur who is utilising his experience with space technology to bring better safety to sports.
I think it was really the realization that this is not massively unattainable. People can do it.
No unicorns, no brands, just hardworking people who built their business from the ground up, sharing their experience so others can learn. Presented by Larissa Feeney from Kenore. This is Real Business Conversations.
Hello, my name is Larissa Feeney. I am CEO and founder at Kenore Finance and Business Services. Personal tech has been developing at a rapid pace over the last decade and has found an important place in the sporting world. Our guest today has spotted a gap in the market for a wearable technology that solves one of sport's hidden dangers, head injuries.
So we really want to try and help the amateur club by giving an affordable solution that's reliable.
Having combined his passion, purpose and experience working with the European Space Agency, we hear about the challenges of building a product that could save people's lives and the business attitude that has carried him here.
We have to be careful not to take off the blinkers and completely be away with it. So that's kind of where, okay, let's get the laser focus. Let's get the first one over the line.
It's a pleasure to welcome founder and CEO of Sports Impact Technologies, Eoin Tuohy.
Thanks a million, Larissa, and thanks for having me.
I'm delighted you're with us. Can you please tell us, I think we'll start, I have to hear about the European Space Agency, Eoin. Can you tell me about that? How you ended up there and what you did there?
Yeah, I can do. So just a little bit of context, I guess. My background, I'm a mechanical engineer and I did a master's there in UCD, combined mechanical engineering and business. And after I graduated, I went traveling in Australia and worked a plethora of different jobs. And it was really about this time that I was like, where do I want to go and what do I want to do? I'm not ashamed to put my hand up and say I'd done 5 years of engineering and didn't realize that the European Space Agency was a thing. So it was only there when I looked at, I genuinely thought you had to be American and go work for NASA. That was the only route to it. So I kind of looked into that, thought this is something I could possibly pursue. So what I did is I went back to, I was living in Australia at the time and then moved back to Europe and I went to study in France to do a master's in space studies. So that was 9-month master's with a placement on it. And essentially from there, that is what brought me to working in the European Space Agency. So where in particular I was working, it was in the European Astronaut Center in Cologne in Germany. So it's the European Space Agency has centers all throughout Europe. And this is, I think I'd be confident in saying it's the smallest center. There's only about 200 people thereabouts working in it. But it's obviously the home of Europe's astronauts. So it's where they train them, where they do any space medicine with them. They do research around astronaut missions. Pretty much anything to do with the astronauts is based out of the European Astronaut Centre.
And why space, Eoin? Did you always have an interest in that? You were in Australia. What made you decide to either, even go to France and do a master's? Do you speak French?
Nope, not at all. I did in school, and I'm safe to say I don't speak French. But the masters, thankfully, was in English, which was a serious leg up. So I picked up a bit while I was there. But yeah, I always had an interest in space, but I definitely wasn't as you'd say, a space nerd or whatever. I call myself a space nerd now, but I wasn't growing up. I had much interest as the next person, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, I think I just kind of. I think it was really the realization that this is not massively unattainable. People can do it. And I think what really made it relatable, there was a couple of Irish figures knocking about that were somewhat involved in the space. And more I looked into it, it was like, oh, they're Irish people working in it. Even when I went working for the Astronaut Centre, my direct manager was a man from Dublin, Dr. Aidan Cowley. So he was he's leading the team I was working for there and still is. So I think it was just kind of yeah, this is attainable. But actually then I was like, okay, this is actually really, really cool as well. To be working in the space industry is interesting.
It must be interesting. And what were you, so tell us about your role and how long you spent there.
Yeah, so I actually started off as a placement there from an internship. So that was 6 months, I think. And then I actually got a traineeship role, which was 2 years, and that was funded by the Irish Research Council. And then from then on, I got a contract extension then on by ESA themselves. So all in, it was a little over 3 years. And what I was doing there, I was kind of between two teams. So the first team, or the really, really cool team, and they're called Spaceship BAC. So they kind of adopt a skunkworks type model, and it was all about lunar research. So how can we get astronauts to the moon? So everything like, okay, we obviously need oxygen to breathe and for fuel and stuff, but what if we can use the lunar soil there, which is called regolith? What if we can use that to actually build the structures we want here on the moon? And then other things like, of course, like mixing in like augmented reality and virtual reality for the astronauts up there for like training and helping their workflow. What I was kind of looking in was kind of that within that oxygen extraction piece, we kind of discovered a weird phenomena that happens with the lunar soil that just kind of acts in strange ways in the microgravity environment. So we were looking at a bit of research into that, but also what we were doing, and probably the kind of flagship of my time there was something around the astronauts' health on the International Space Station. And there's a condition, and I'll go into a little bit, but there's a condition called SANS, so Space Associated Neurolocular Syndrome. And this is where, in the microgravity environment of the International Space Station, astronauts' visions can be affected. So their vision can get blurry, and it's completely random whether it happens to you or not. It's random whether it happens one eye or two, and random whether it's permanent or not. So we were trying to understand this better. So what we made is a little piece of technology. The previous piece of equipment to scan your eye to understand it was 10 kilograms, it cost €100,000, and we made a little piece of equipment that weighed 30 grams and cost €100.
Oh my God. So 10 kilograms to 30 grams.
Yeah, yeah, and did the same thing, and then of course we threw AI on top of that to help diagnosis. But our kind of little flag, unofficial flag, was that we got it from literally concept, from idea to actually flying and operational within the space of a year, which I think is some unofficial record for getting it up in record time.
And did I read somewhere that that technology still in use in the International Space Station today?
Yeah, so it's had a couple of iterations. So I'm pretty sure the actual one we sent up is still flying up there in a storage locker somewhere. And they used it a few times, and now they have a couple of iterations. I think they're looking at sending up the next version soon enough now, which again has enhancements built on the previous stuff.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. So then what happened? What came next?
Yeah, so next I think I was working for them, and at the time I kind of a job offer was coming with them, which would be a bit more permanent, and it was for the Eurocom role, which is Capcom Houston. We have a problem. The person who talks up the European equivalent to that. Pretty cool, but then I kind of knew I wanted to be back in Ireland, and there's not too many of them in Ireland. That is one of the few roles you need to be abroad for. So I kind of had the eye on the horizon for a few little things, and I was looking, and I knew somewhere deep down I wanted to try my own thing. I think my parents had their own business as well, so I've always been exposed to it a little bit, and I like the entrepreneurial stuff we did in college. So I was just keeping an eye out, and it was literally my dad had sent me an article on head impacts in soccer. So I'm a Gaelic player, still playing until the hip gives out, but we're still going for the moment. And a massive, massive rugby fan. So I knew it. I knew well about it in there, but I didn't really know about it too much in the soccer space. And essentially, it was an article. I think it was about 2012, 2020. I think the article was or the paper anyway. But it was just about the cumulative effects of heading the ball in soccer. And the research was early. It wasn't like it was statistically significant, but not conclusive. But they're like, hey, there's some interest in here that has long term effects in just heading the ball in soccer. So I'm like, this is really interesting. So really, I was just tinkering away in my own time while still working away, coming up with a bit of a designs here and there, and then reached a point where I was like, maybe this is something to actually put more effort and time into.
So that all came from your dad sending you an article. He thought you might be interested in it. Or did he think that it might be a business idea? Was that what he was thinking?
He always has a good head on for little ideas here and there, and he was like, there could be something here, like a business idea. It was with the business angle in mind. And he was like, no, he didn't say what it was, and or like he's like this is interesting, like this is a problem that people are front and foremost, that they're having to deal with right now.
So the impact of playing soccer over the longer term, I know the careers aren't very long anyway, but I suppose starting to play as a child and then playing right through adolescence and into adulthood, the impact of or small injuries over time, or contact with the ball over time, I suppose.
Yeah. This study that was referred to in particular was about heading the ball in soccer. So it looked at the prevalence, and essentially what it was getting at is something called CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So it's a condition developed that's essentially it's an increase in neurodegenerative diseases, an increased risk later in life. So Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and motor neurons, and it's essentially saying is as you had this, and it was looking at professionals and professionals back in the day where the ball was a heavy leather ball as well. So like it was just an interesting study at the time that it was like, okay, there's an increased, they're 3.5 times more likely to experience this increased risk. It was just that kind of came up and they're like, hey, this is, again, it's statistically significant. We need to do more research. And there's more and more research coming out and pretty much nearly every day now at this point, you know. But it was that was the thing. Because again, we know about the big impacts in Gaelic and rugby, concussion, the big heavy impacts, but it was this cumulative effect. It was like, okay, this is bigger than just the immediate thing you see that happens on the pitch, you know.
Yeah, fascinating, fascinating. So, okay, so you saw that and then you thought, okay, there's something in this. And so did you kind of go out, start developing that straight away then?
Yeah, so it was. I know sometimes you hear people like, "Oh, just give it up everything and remortgage the house 17 times." Blah blah blah. It wasn't really that. We actually had quite a nice parachute landed in. I don't have a house to remortgage 20 times, so that wasn't an option. But um, but no, literally. So I started. I genuinely just tinkering as an engineer kind of project. Let's see what I can build in the bedroom, just as a bit of fun, you know, and let's build a little sensor and see a little app and really just basic stuff. And then I was like, okay, there might be something in here. So then what I did is and I think this is the parachute thing, well, still working part-time, I did the New Frontiers program. So we started at the part-time courses and the phase one was pretty much, is this a nice idea or is this a business? Is it go or no go? So did that.
Is there a market there? And is there a product is there product market fit?
Yeah. And it doesn't, the first one doesn't hash out all the thing. It's just like, is this more than just your little side project for the crack? So yeah, at the end of that, it was like, okay, I know myself. Yeah. So I applied for the phase two and that's where you get a stipend and it's a 6 months, pretty much a crash course, business crash course. And it was exceptional. And I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to get into that. And that was September of 22. And that's where I said, okay, let's go full time. So, that was full time on it from there.
That's the timeline. So September 22, whenever you said, right, I'm going to give this all of my time then.
Yeah. That was the jump point then. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So phase two, New Frontiers, did you have like a minimum viable product coming out of that program then, Owen, or was there another step?
No, we didn't have an MVP. I think as we're hardware sensor, there's always like, I guess there's always the question what truly is the MVP. But coming out of that, we had a version which is nearly a proof of concept, you could say. Now I think we went to a few prototypes, but we had something that a customer could hold in their hand, they could shake, see, get an idea how to wear it and stuff, and it was able to portray the picture while them actually engaging and activating the sensor. So essentially, that gave us a platform to be like, a lot of it was on the business side of it that gave us the good backing, and it kind of gave us the next steps. Like, okay, where are we going next? Where are we getting our next influx of cash from? You know, was that's what we were coming out of. Like, you know, okay, we know we have a good business idea. We know we have a little bit of traction here, some customer discovery, but where are we going next with how are we moving it forward next? You know, and for us, it was like,
And I know that you've raised money. So this was September 22. You went through phase two, so we're into 2023 at this point. And did you start raising at that time?
yeah. So I think we finished in March, and we were raising probably a hard time. We were looking for like, okay, where are we going to go? So the immediate thing we kind of had in the pipeline coming out of March was the European Space Agency Business Incubation Center. So they have a great program here. If anyone's listening and they have any technology, whatever hardware, software that can be used either in space or it's using space technology, and space technology is air observation, so like satellite imagery or GPS. That all counts, you know. So if it's applicable in that sense, you're applicable to apply. And essentially, what that was is a €50,000 grant. It's co-funded by Enterprise Ireland and the European Space Agency, and we were applicable. We're looking at upstream actually using it as well, and potential. We use some downstream elements as well, and essentially we were applicable. We went through the process, and I think by June, then that kind of opened that up for us. So that was our first kind of chunk get going, and just at the end of March as well, we got lucky. I entered a pitch competition, the TU Dublin Pitch Perfect competition, which has a €5,000 cash prize. I was fortunate enough to win that, which gave a bit of legs, and they give you office space as well. So it was nice for having the hardware, having like somewhere to put things and leave behind the locked door, you know. And so they were the first kind of steps coming out, but then we knew like, okay, that'll be short lived. We got to kind of start looking for our next real batch of funding, if that makes sense. So I think the plan, and I think this is probably one of the biggest lessons learned of just how long that takes, and how much work is required behind to get that. I know everyone had said like it takes so much longer, and it's so cliche, but it did really take long.
I think it'll be really interesting because, to hear about that, because you're right, everybody says it, and everybody says really you need to be dedicating all of your time to it, which is very difficult whenever you're also trying to build a product and, find potential customers and all that. So how did you approach that fundraising journey then?
Yeah, so I think when we sat down and we got the ESA thing and there's a little bit of breathing room, we write down the P paper and we're like, okay, September 23, we'll have our 500,000 funding in. Just to cut it short, like we only just closed around the Christmas of last year.
Okay.
So,
So what? So what's
there
that?
was definitely
15
naive,
months.
yeah, there was definitely naive there right now in the September timeframe. But so what we did, I think the first thing when we went out looking, we kind of got a feel, and I think between the new frontiers and stuff, it gives you a good idea for the landscape, and we kind of do okay. We're looking for the kind of private angels, friends and family, and that's where we're at. We're not at a VC level of investment. So then what we started to do was a lot of conversations. We did some pitches and stuff, but very few of that came to actual fruition, especially the kind of come in the front door stuff. Next to none of it, I think, came to like anything tangible at the end of it. What was a big step up and really really helps along the way, I think, timelines around, so coming around that September time, we actually applied, and I can't remember when we were granted it, but around that time we went through Enterprise Ireland Pre-Seed Start Fund, and we got that. So that was a big chunk. So that was €100,000, and then essentially you're an Enterprise Ireland client. So and that's tranche now. So you get 50 and 50, and you have to hit milestones to do it. But that was huge. So that essentially enabled our first hire, which was great, and then gave us that runway to be like, okay, like now we know what we need to do. It gives us cash to actually move the product on, but actually gives us that runway for the next funding. So yeah, I think funding wise, then to just keep on the funding journey. So our target we wanted to hit was 500,000, and then I think when we started out, we had what we thought were the guts of it coming into the summer, or just sorry, coming out of the summer. But then the summer hit, and it's just kind of a lot of stagnation there. So what we had a bunch of angels and some family offices, and a syndicate, and yeah, so it was by Christmas just gone that we officially closed it out, and that was the H band was in part of that as well, the Halo Business Angels Network. But it was amazing how much of that was, I can actually all tie it back to one connection from introductions. So all of them, with the exception of one. So like I think we had a bunch, maybe about 10 or so different investors. Of all of them, with the exception of one, all came from one introduction who introduced me to other people. So I think that was what I was trying to get for, like the warm, the going in the front door and the cold entries. It actually all stemmed from one individual, and that individual was an investor, but he didn't invest in us, but he just did the intros that led to next to more to more to more. So
Isn't that amazing? And so it just points to the importance of your network, because the more people that you know in that space and the more people who know you, the more people they know, and so on, so you just never know. And even being like taking part in New Frontiers and taking part in phase 2 of New Frontiers must have opened up that space for you a lot, and opened up doors for you. Or did you find it difficult to get those initial conversations?
No, I definitely 100% opened up doors, and I actually say like that was actually some of the better, more valuable than like the stipend or stuff. It was actually those introductions to the right people, and some of them were direct introductions. They also have, and the mentor network Enterprise Ireland have. You get part of that as Enterprise Ireland. That was truly invaluable to us. One of the strongest elements we got, and just having that is huge. It also gives you like the language to use. Like, I remember I met someone, I met a business owner before going into this, and just ran things by him. And I actually came across the old, what I showed him on the day. And I'm just looking back at it like, oh, he must have been looking at me with two heads, because it just the language used and the way and what people actually really care about. Like people don't care too much about the nuts and bolts of the product that you love. Like it's nearly a box tick sometimes. Like, does it work? Yeah. Okay, move on. So all that.
Yeah. So, what's the advice you would give then, say for somebody who's starting that journey now, just on that particular topic you raised? Because you're right. I mean, it's not that they don't care about the nuts and bolts of the product. They assume that you can do that, right? They assume that the product will work. They're more concerned about, other aspects. What should you have focused on that maybe you didn't, or what details should you not have gone into that you did go into?
I think probably like to someone in my boots now, I think a lot of people have said to me when they're investing, it was like, or they're looking at it, it's like, okay, what's the idea? Who's the person? And is there a market? And that's what they boil it down to. Three things that they've actually said that to me. So I think when I say a big focus on the team, you might be on your own, which I was. And actually I did waste a bit of time being like, I need a co-founder, or I need someone actually, when it's like, no, just kind of pick yourself up and identify like, oh yeah, I don't have these people, we'll get them. So kind of lean into if you're in like you're kind of selling to them or trying to sell the idea, lean into these things. Then the market, is it like a lot of the time, and this might be a bit boilerplate, but a lot of the time I always kind of did the bottom up market. So like, how many actual people are there? Let's multiply that, as opposed to 5% of X up here. And often, even though you've done the work, they'll never ask that. But sometimes when they do, it means you know everything behind it. So you can kind of, well, these are where the numbers came from, and actually I'll bring this element in. And then the other thing is the idea. Just like, if you believe it yourself, like do sell it, put the best foot forward. I'm still trying to improve the messaging and stuff, but even like someone said to me the other day, I was telling something. I'm like, no, lead with that. Like, say that first. We're talking 10 minutes here, and you haven't told me this element. So I think just trying to get that's not super clear, but trying to get the messaging across easy. Yeah. I think that is key. But one other side is like, that's kind of if you're talking to investors. But I'd really just say, like, on kind of in that vein, if you can find a mentor who's good, and even just an element, and as many as you can, it's like gold dust for me. There's a good few of them. Some of them have come on investors, or there's mentors and advisors. But honest God, like, it's a phone call with either tiny big problems or big strategy elements, and they know, and they can do intros. So if you can just find anyone that's kind of in your field or anyway loose, that is just, it's so valuable, because you don't know what you don't know. I think that for us has been, and we're still getting introduced to more people who are more and more value, like, so. And it doesn't have to be anything formal. Just find someone who'll give you advice, like. And I think Ireland, I've experienced, is exceptional for that. Like, people are really, really willing to help.
Oh yeah, people are really, really open to help and happy to help, and will help for free, and will give you their time for free, which is so important as a startup. So that's fantastic. You've gotten that. Well done. You've raised your 500. You've closed your round. Um, Future plans for raising. Would you think you'll have to raise again, or will you have to start the process again? Or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately. So, no, but we are planning on raising again now. Hopefully before the end of the year. Lessons learned. So, this is not the September. This should hopefully be before the end of the year. But no, this is kind of the plan now. We're gearing up. So our plan is now to do another raise, significantly larger raise. And what that'll do is that'll get us the capital to drive forward, enter the market, and really just capitalize on this opportunity that we have. I think for us, it's the timing is so key. It's such a good time to be solving the problem, that if we were to go slower, say, or like not raising money and not being able to capitalize this, we'd lose the opportunity. So that's why I think we're like, okay, let's try and go that investment, that VC route now, and really capitalize on the timing that we have.
And you've mentioned your mentors. I mean, even having the thought process that you've just gone through there, that you're happy that you have to move fast to get there quicker. And some companies have to do that, and then other companies don't. It just depends on the sector. But for you, Owen, how did you come to that conclusion? I mean, your advisors, do they work together to advise you, or do you have individual discussions with various people and then come up with these decisions yourself?
Primarily individual discussions with the advisors and the mentors. So we have our Patrick Ryan was one of my mentors. He still is, and he's come on as a non-executive director. And again, really, that you don't know what you don't know. He's had his own business. He's successfully exited. So he's helping a lot, and that kind of, this is the investment route, this is the way to go. But also saying that, like, we talk to other advisors, a good few different people, and then you're kind of piecing it all together. Sometimes you have a few of them in the room, and it's great, but to be honest, yeah, not too often is it like, let's talk about the business all together when they're separate advisors. So really, I think you're trying to get bits of advice, and it's all valuable, but then you have to pick what, because you know every element of it, so you have to pick which is best for you. But really things like that, like the investment route and stuff, which again, obviously, as the previous round, how long it took, I don't know. So really leaning heavy on the good advice, and the good advice because the people behind that has really helped.
Yeah. Okay. No, well done. Well done. Well done on getting this far. Um, can I just change over to the team then? Because you said the 100,000 from Enterprise Ireland allowed you to make your first hire. What was your first hire?
Yeah, so our first hire was an individual called Tez, Testimony O'Hara. So Tez is a computer programmer, or he's a computer engineer, should I say, but he is a wizard. And I'd not say that lightly. He's unbelievable at just putting his hand to anything and getting it done. So Tez had actually done an internship with us, and then it was like, okay, this, like, I know what you're doing is great. And I think at the early stage, when obviously we're hardware, we've a ton of software, we've everything in between, to have someone who can just put their hand to everything and you get on with it well, the value it gave to the business was, like, it exponentially brought it forward, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a great first hire. And have you made any additional hires since?
Yeah, so we'll have a few. So we have at the minute we have two data scientists with us. So one's an intern and one's in with us part time. So just a huge piece of our product is the algorithms and turning that impact into meaningful data. So we're been heavy on that. Next month we'll be taking on a CTO who will actually be my own brother. I know it sounds strange, but he's Donal is his name, but he's been a senior programmer for, I think he's over 7-8 years experience in senior programming. And ultimately, what we have a piece of hardware gathering data, but it's we're a software company with a hardware front door, so it's really important we have that kind of setup from the ground up.
Tell me about then the market for the product. So who's the customer?
Yeah, so to mention, we're pre-revenue, so we're still in that development. So we're doing pilots and stuff with I might use the word customer, but it's potential customers, if that makes sense. So what we're really looking at is teams and clubs. We're really, really targeting the amateur game. So we obviously watching the Six Nations at the minute, the Scotland game on the weekend, the really bad head clash, obviously, with the two Scottish lads. Everyone sees that, it's a lot of visibility, and they're really, really high impacts there. But actually, when you look at the amateur game, they're having just as bad impacts, because especially, like, say secondary school boys, you got some lads who they're about 14 years old, and one looks like Andrew Porter and one looks like the Gooch. So they're completely different and still discovering their bodies and might not have the same professional tackling experience. So actually, the impacts that's where they're worrying, and they're still as prominent. So that's what we're really targeting, and what we're really trying to do is just like, I play sport, I love it. If we can just remove the worry and reduce the risk around head impacts, you're never going to stop all head impacts. I mean, if you fall or you turn the wrong way, theoretically you can get a concussion. So, like, even with no contact, so you're never going to remove it. But if we can just ensure that we catch them all, that's what we're going for. So we really want to, like, try and help the amateur club by giving an affordable solution that's reliable, and then the amateur sports can move forward without that concern.
So the idea is, so it's almost like a B2B product then. So you're not going direct to the customer. You're going to the club.
Exactly. So it's kind of a kit. We're B2B. We're focusing on the club, and there's a couple of reasons there. We know for parents are very, very keen to get their hands on this, but essentially just it's kind of hand in hand with the development piece what we're at. So if we start, we'll have one customer and I have 300 plus users, and we can really iron out the creases with them before offering that B2C offering, which that'll be something we'll look at down the line. But really starting with that kind of club piece.
And what's the biggest? Because I think that makes sense to me. Like that B2B would be certainly easier than the one by one. It would be harder. I have actually a question that I should have asked whenever you were talking about funding, and that was whenever you were pitching the product and pitching to investors or potential investors. Did they quiz you a lot on the numbers? How much you're going to sell it for, what's the margin, all of that? And were you able to talk easily about the numbers, or did you find that aspect difficult? Because a lot of founders find that hard.
Yeah, I think always when you're like, so I've sat down far too many times and looked at the financial projections and the cost, the unit economics and stuff. And so I think there is always an element of it, like, Jesus, like when you're looking at all the numbers, how are we looking? But I think for our case, a lot of the time people were understood where we're at. We're pre-revenue, so like when they're like, actually, a lot of the investors were really, really clued in to kind of where we were at, which I think helped. We were kind of talking to investors who knew where we're at, and they're like, okay, we understand you might not have the unit economics nailed down because you're still prototyping, which was great. So you're speaking off the same page, you know. But then they did ask the questions, and I think it was really valuable to be like, okay, no, this is why we have this number, and this is why we're expecting this to stand over it. But obviously, as people say, like, I'm not a accountant, not a financial guy, but I think that's where I've had to put a little bit of extra work in and do that more and more to make sure I'm like, again, I'm not being like, no, this is the exact answer, but like, this is my justification and my thinking behind it. And a lot of times I think they were looking for that rather than they know at the stage you're at, nothing's concrete and probably in a month's time it's all null and void, but at least they can see the thinking behind it. I think that was a big element they were looking for.
And you might find, I think that speaks to, you were very clear, you are very clearly pre-revenue, and it's very much about getting a viable product to the market at this point. And as you move through your funding journey, you might find that there's different questions asked of you or of the business in terms of numbers whenever you start looking for those bigger numbers, those bigger investors, the VCs, for example.
Yeah. I think like even that you're gearing up, and it's gone from like, oh yeah, idea person and market to like, okay, potential customers, letters of intent. Let's see your traction now. That's not just like, oh, here's this thing down the line. It's like you're close to it now, and let's see proof of that. So yeah, it does evolve, and the questions very much differ. And I know talking to other founders around who are that stage ahead, and they're like, oh, it changes massively like then, you know. So and that's where and again, speaking from not being there, but they say that's where it really comes down to the numbers, like, you know, nailing down to the numbers, you know.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I think that's why you were very right to do what you did when you did it, because that that money will allow you to bring the product a bit further. But actually the focus on the numbers at that point probably wasn't important because you were nowhere near ready to talk about numbers in a detail level, you know. Um yeah, okay, no, that's very interesting. What have you found has been the biggest challenge then, on a personal level? Because this is a very different journey to working as an employee on, isn't it? And as you say, you do have business in your background. There is entrepreneurs in your family, so it's in your genes anyway. Is it what you expected so far?
Yes and no, I'd say. Yes, in the sense that I really love the freedom's probably the wrong word, but you're able to drive the ship, so to speak, you know. And it was like, oh, we're not just doing this because, you know, it's coming down the line. It was like, no, this is where we need to go, and you're able to just drive that and be reactive and early. So like I think that's the yes element, and the no, and again probably a bit cliche, but like it is, every day is a little different, and it's a whole new challenges, and I didn't know I'd be doing something with that, or I'd end up meeting this person or whatever it is. The no element in what I expected is I didn't have a clue what I'd be expecting. You know, it was all completely new, and the thing is like it's always new, always learning, always something different and not always good. But I think coming back to the challenge piece, I think on a personally, obviously, as I said, the fundraising challenges, we have loads of technical challenges, all the from the minutia, the little things to the bigger problems. But on a personal note, I think it's kind of nearly like the emotional regulation. Like the highs and lows are, I kind of say it's nearly like a pendulum. And if you had a little pendulum, and this is like a good day and this is a bad day, it used to be slow and just swing. And I feel now the extremes of the pendulum up here, and I'm nearly swinging back on the minute, you know. Like there, you get a good email and something's great, or a good bit of progress, and you turn around, you get another email, and you're like, oh, the dread and the doom. So I'm trying to emotionally, genuinely, and I must thank my fiance Sarah for this, for being a bit of a grounding rock, you know. But like trying to bring it back down and be like, okay, like don't take it personally, move on. Like you look at the next thing here, don't be too into dreads, and also celebrate the wins, but don't go up here, like, you know. So I think that's been more than I've ever experienced, you know, this pendulum, if that makes sense.
The highs are highs and the lows are lows, and I don't even know whether that changes. Like you're talking about emails. I just got an email this afternoon, and as soon as I seen the guy's name, I thought, oh, and that's like,
I was really hoping you were saying it does get better, but
no, like, I think you get used to it. I think you get used to it. I think the nature of it, and you definitely get used to it. And I don't experience those vicious highs and vicious lows like you do in the early days, but purely because once you deal with an issue once, then you know how to deal with the issue. So the next time you come across a similar issue, well, you've dealt with it already. So it's not the same challenge. Do you know what I mean? So it's that resilience. You're continually building a resilience. We hear that word, don't we, a lot about how it's important to build resilience, but actually it really is. It's a cliche, but it really is.
Yeah, because like I think God, as you probably know yourself well, but the amount of like no's or just let down or silent no's or ghosting and all the like the knockdowns you get, and you're just like, oh Jesus, go again. Again, it is. And you get that in all walks of life, I think. But then when you're this is your baby, you're bringing it forward, and you're really banking on this, and it seems great, and to be deflated, then yeah, I think there is that resilience has to be there.
And then the high whenever you find somebody that sees the opportunity in the product, that nobody else can see, or that very few others can see, that, aligns with your vision and can understand what the vision, the picture that you're painting and what the vision you're trying to portray. I mean, there's nothing like that feeling either. But it's just finding those people on and making sure they have the money to back you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we've got that. Like we had someone pull out of the umpteen hour and everything was a kibosh, and then we got someone else in, and actually, like, Jesus, massive fill for a line, and they're just someone that totally gets it, buys in, bringing so much more, and you're like, yeah, that's the exception. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it happens
yeah,
for a
yeah,
reason.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it happens for a reason. And like, when are you hoping, if you were to look forward, when are you hoping to be ready for the market?
So we're hoping, all going well, to be kind of September this year. We'll have kind of a soft launch, like with these pilot customers, there. So we'll have users before we're selling, if that makes sense. So we'll building up that data and that reliance. But all going well, by next year, we'll have a product ready on the market for, like, by next year, we'll have it ready for purchase.
So you're building technology now, and I can understand what you're doing. And it sounds great because I have 3 teenage boys. So obviously I can understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Do you have anything in mind for the future development of it? Like, is there anything that, you see is possible with this product? Once you get it past this first iteration.
Yeah, so we've a couple of things tagged on. So obviously, what we're looking for right now is safety and just enabling participation. That's kind of what we're going on for. Um, and there's kind of two routes. One, we're in the sports industry. That's where we see a big application, but also there's applications there in other sports industries. So that's or in other markets. So other sports, like you obviously think of the field sports straight away. But then individual sports like horse riding, skiing, anything on a bike, of course. But then obviously industry applications where headbangs are concerned. So like from forestry to factory, So there's
Oh, very good. Okay. Yeah.
bring it to other applications, but then also adding in additional benefits and features. So like if we can add in performance elements, that's quite attractive then to coaches and that sort of element. So you got that double pull elements. So yeah, so a few things are kind of be working in a parallel. But right now we're kind of
So there's a lot of potential there.
yeah, and I think that's it. And we have to be careful not to like take off the blinkers and completely be away with it. So that's kind of where, like, okay, let's get the laser focus, let's get the first one over the line, and then we can kind of assess it.
Because there is a danger, isn't there, with something like that you can go after the shiny new thing all the time. And that focus is so important just to get it, to make progress, to make real progress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think we might even fall victim to that. And it's like, oh, if we do this, and then you look back and you're like, oh, we never really moved anything. Like, let's stop line in the sand. We need to get here. Okay. It is just easy done.
It is easy done, but it's very much down to your personality, actually, the personality of the founder. So are you the type of person that can focus on something and see it through, or do you find yourself being distracted?
I definitely find myself being distracted, but I think it's okay to be like, okay, no, let's laser focus. Like even yeah, I mean, very tangibly, simply, and it's like, okay, here's the 4 things I need to do in the next 3 months. Like if they don't get done, we haven't got it done. Like I literally have 4 lines on the whiteboard in front of me, like and it's like, how are we getting on with them to bring yourself back around? But then as well, I think it's also good to get that little distraction sometimes because like little opportunities pop up that may come to great fruition. And if you're too in the weeds, like you might not see that bigger element. So I think trying to get that execution correct, but also just pop your head up above the parapet sometimes to see what's going on.
Yeah. I'm reading a book at the minute, or listening to the book at the minute, called, I think it's called The Four Disciplines of Execution. And the point they made is just that, like they use the example, if you have 12 goals, then that's not really goals. They're just 12 tasks that you have to do. You have one goal. So, the equivalent to your 4 things that you have to do in the next 3 months. They would say have one thing and be focused on that one thing. And yes, acknowledge all the good ideas that might come up, and even acknowledge that they're great ideas and they may well be great ideas, but you have to have the one goal and focus on that one goal. Otherwise, you'll never, make the boat go faster, I suppose, or, progress towards the goal.
Yeah, it sounds right. Give us the name again.
4 Disciplines of Execution is the name
4
of the book.
Disciplines of Execution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. Okay, last question I have for you, Eoin, and that is the one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who has an idea and ambition for a business. What's the advice?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but like single-handedly, and I still say this too, but get a mentor, run it by someone, or just get advice. Even things like New Frontiers, you might not know about them unless the mentor says it to you, and that can be anyone. Like ideally someone who's maybe in a similar, like say for herself, it's someone who's doing like an investment style business. That's good to kind of get the feel. But like if it's for a business, like find a business owner and talk to them and get the feel. Like, I mean, a great starting point is the local enterprise office, but really I'd honest to God, like a mentor, an individual who's been there, done there. Again, it's just invaluable. Like you can't put a price on it. And when you're sharing with them, like be open and sharing. I know a few people like are like, oh, like keep the idea precious and stuff. And okay, I think it's some really extreme cases that might be it, but for the most part, people aren't. Everyone's busy. They've got their stuff going on. They're not going to stop and steal your idea, and they're more than happy to help. Like, and we've found that like you share it all, and they'll be like, yeah, that's great, and go here and don't do that and that. It's just find a mentor. Even just go up and ask someone. Maybe it's a friend, a family, a loose connection, a cold outreach, call into a shop and asking someone. But if you can get someone there, it's life changing in a good way.
Yeah. And I would absolutely agree. I think that's great advice. I even did it on LinkedIn. I would have messaged people on LinkedIn and asked them, would they give me like a virtual coffee? And the relationship can go from there. So there's so many ways of, and people are so generous, so incredibly generous with their time. So absolutely great advice. Thank you very much. Eoin Tuohy, founder and CEO of Sports Impact Technologies. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks to me, Arissa. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Real Business Conversations with Kenor. For more information on this episode, see the description area of this podcast or visit our website, kenor.com. Remember to press follow on your podcast player now so you'll get a brand new episode every single month. This podcast is produced by DustPod.io for Kenor Finance and Business Services.